I know. I should have listened to my gut earlier today. You see, it was just another run-of-the-mill Friday afternoon when I decided to stop by the local gas station, the Blue Sky Refinery, for a quick pit stop before heading back home. It's that station on the corner with the giant blue sign and a friendly guy named Jerry who always greets me with a smile. I stepped out of my car, grabbing an energy drink from the cooler as I walked over to fill up the tank. That's when it happened. The eerie silence hit me like a punch in the gut. The place was usually bustling. Cars swirled around the pumps, kids yelling and laughing while their parents loaded up on snacks. But today, there wasn't a sound. I felt my heart racing as I grabbed the nozzle from behind the counter and started filling up my tank. That's when I noticed something odd about the fuel hose. It was moving on its own. I couldn't believe it, but before I could react, a loud hissing sound echoed through the station. I quickly tried to pull out my wallet, but it felt unusually heavy and rigid, like there were things inside that weren't supposed to be there. It took me a moment to realize what was going on. My phone had somehow slipped out of my pocket and landed on the ground near the pumps. I bent down to grab it, but as soon as I did, a chill ran down my spine. "Hey, get away from there!" a voice shouted, breaking through the eerie silence. I whirled around, only to see Jerry standing at the door with his eyes wide open, clutching what looked like an old-fashioned fire extinguisher. His face was pale, and he was panting heavily. "Jerry? What's going on?" I asked, my voice shaking a little. It's not me," Jerry said in a raspy voice. He pointed towards the back of the station where an old man with a long white beard was standing. The man was dressed all in black, like he belonged to some strange cult or something. His eyes were fixed on me with a cold intensity that made my skin crawl. "Who are you?" I demanded, feeling more than a little scared now. The old man just smiled, revealing sharp, pointed teeth. He stepped forward, and as he did, the air around him seemed to grow colder. His fingers began to glow with an eerie red light. "You'll see soon enough," he whispered, his voice low and menacing. "No way. This is some kind of sick prank, right?" I said, trying to keep my cool. But before anyone could respond, the old man raised his hand, and a stream of cold air blasted out from it. It hit me in the face like a physical force, sending me stumbling back. "No, this isn't happening," I muttered, still trying to process what was going on. The old man advanced slowly towards Jerry, who was backing up against the wall with his fire extinguisher raised. His eyes darted around as he tried to find a way out. I watched in horror as the old man's hand reached out and grabbed hold of the nozzle of the fire extinguisher. He pulled it away, revealing a dark, oily substance that dripped down his fingers. What are you?" Jerry stammered, his voice trembling. The old man let out an eerie, blood-curdling laugh as he turned to face me again. His eyes flickered with something otherworldly. It was then that I noticed the fuel pump was leaking. Oil was pouring out from under it in a steady stream. I've heard of this place," Jerry whispered, his voice barely audible. "People say the Blue Sky Refinery is cursed. They call him, the old man." "Cursed? What the hell does that even mean?" I shouted, feeling like a complete idiot for having stopped there. But before anyone could answer, something unexpected happened. A loud crash sounded from outside, and out stepped a group of teenagers who had clearly been parked nearby. They looked around nervously, as if they'd just come across a ghost story in real life. "What's going on here?" one of them said, his voice high-pitched and scared. The old man snarled at them, his eyes narrowing dangerously. I realized he was about to do something really bad, like attack the kids if they didn't leave fast enough. "Get out now!" Jerry shouted, pushing me towards the door. We managed to scramble outside just as the old man lunged at the teenagers. They ran screaming back into their cars, leaving us standing there in shock and fear. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down, but my heart was still pounding hard against my ribs, and my palms were sweating. The old man turned back towards Jerry and me, his eyes glowing even brighter. He raised his hand again, and this time he didn't just emit cold air. There was a flicker of something that looked like fire. "No way, this is some kind of magical ritual or something," I said aloud, still trying to understand what was happening. But before I could say anything else, the old man's hand snapped out towards Jerry. With a sickening crack, he grabbed hold of Jerry and dragged him back inside the station. The door slammed shut behind him with an ominous finality. I stood there, frozen, unable to move or think straight as I watched the old man disappear inside. My mind raced. Was this all some elaborate prank? Or was it real? And if it was real, what could have caused a gas station to become cursed? "Jerry!" I shouted, pounding on the closed door. "Jerry, are you okay?" There was no answer. The old man had sealed us in with Jerry inside. Panic set in as I realized we were trapped. There was only one exit, and it was guarded by a dangerous entity. My hands shook as I tried to find the nearest phone or any form of communication, but there was nothing. The silence that filled the night air around us was deafening. "Jerry, can you hear me?" I whispered, my voice breaking with fear and desperation. I couldn't see through the thick glass window, so I had to rely on sound. There were no noises coming from inside. Time seemed to stretch out in endless agony as I waited, hoping for some sign of life, or even a way out. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion from inside. The station building shook with the force of it. My heart skipped a beat, and I clung onto the door handle so tightly my knuckles turned white. More explosions followed, several in quick succession. The ground trembled beneath my feet, and bits of debris flew through the air, hitting the windows with a sharp crack. "Jerry?" I called again, but there was no reply. The old man must have done something to him. My mind raced as I tried to think of any way out. There had to be some kind of emergency exit or something that I hadn't noticed before. I paced around the edge of the building, checking every possible opening. There was one small door near the back that seemed slightly ajar. Without thinking, I pushed it open and stepped inside. It led down into a basement area with old gas tanks lined up in rows. I quickly shut the door behind me, just as another explosion sent shockwaves through the building. I huddled in the corner, trying to stay out of sight as the noise outside grew more intense. The explosions were getting louder and closer now, and I could hear the old man's voice, growling orders at someone else inside. "I need you to find them, quickly," the old man shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "They're down here somewhere." The basement was dark, and I fumbled for a flashlight on my phone. The beam of light illuminated the rows of gas tanks as it flickered across the floor. As I moved further in, I noticed something odd. There were strange markings carved into the walls. What is this?" I whispered to myself, squinting at the symbols. They looked like some kind of ancient language, or maybe an incantation. Suddenly, a cold draft hit me from behind, and I spun around, heart racing. There was nothing there, just the darkness closing in around me. But then, I saw it. The old man himself, standing in front of one of the gas tanks, with his hand raised above it. The tank was smoking, and a strange red light emanated from its surface. "No, don't do that!" I shouted, but my voice sounded small and insignificant against the booming noise outside. The old man turned slowly, and his eyes met mine. He smiled, revealing those sharp, pointed teeth once more. Without warning, he raised his hand, and a stream of flames shot out from it directly at me. I screamed as the heat hit my skin, forcing me to back away into the corner. "No way," I whispered, tears forming in my eyes. This couldn't be happening. This was just some sick joke, right? But then, there was a sudden change in the old man's demeanor. He lowered his hand and looked at it as if something had taken control of him. His face contorted into an expression of confusion and pain before he suddenly dropped to his knees, clutching his chest. "Oh no," I gasped, seeing that the flames had somehow ignited a small amount of flammable liquid on his shirt. The old man let out a pained cry as the fire spread quickly. He tried to stand up and run for the door, but he stumbled and fell over. Flames licked at his clothes, and I could see his skin turning charred. Before long, the entire room was engulfed in flames, and the old man's body lay motionless on the floor, consumed by fire. The basement grew silent once more. "Jerry!" I shouted, but there was no answer. I realized then that he must have been gone for a while. Maybe he had found an escape route or died in one of the explosions. But as I stood there, huddled in the corner with my phone still clutched in my hand, I felt something shift inside me. The basement was silent now, but the memories of what had happened here echoed through my mind. This wasn't just a story or an urban legend. It was real, and it had changed me somehow. I took a deep breath and tried to steady myself. I knew I couldn't stay there forever. I needed to get out before the station collapsed completely. But how? Then, as if in response to my thoughts, one of the old gas tanks exploded again, sending debris flying into the air. It was a distraction, a way out. Without hesitation, I rushed towards the door and managed to squeeze through just as it started to cave in. Outside, the night sky was filled with bright flashes of lightning, and thunder rumbled loudly in the distance. I stumbled back onto the street, disoriented and shaken, but alive. As I ran down the road towards my car, I couldn't help but look back at the Blue Sky Refinery. The flames were still dancing high into the sky, casting eerie shadows on the buildings around it. That night changed me in ways I never expected. It made me realize that sometimes the lines between reality and nightmare are very thin indeed. And as I drove away from the station, leaving the burning building behind, I couldn't shake the feeling that something about the Blue Sky Refinery would stay with me forever. I arrived home safely, my heart still pounding in my chest. I knew I had to tell someone who wouldn't laugh and call it a crazy story. But for now, I kept it to myself, knowing full well that the truth is often